For the next hour, you'll be leaving the Show Me state and entering the Show Me the Money state. So stop what you're doing, grab a pen, and get ready to learn. Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group will be your guide for straight talk and honest answers about living the life you deserve in retirement. So prepare to be empowered. Now, here are your Show Me the Money hosts, Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shade.
Thanks so much. Welcome to Show Me the Money, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help you reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. On today's show, we're going to be talking about 5% Treasuries are back. Does that change how much risk retirees need to take? Also, money through the eyes of a 15-year-old, particularly Trevor Floyd. Is the best retirement strategy half guaranteed and half invested? And what if retirement comes earlier than you'd planned? My name's Jeff Shade. As always, I'm just here to ask the questions with the words of wisdom and solid advice. They come from Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group. Hey, Jake, how you doing today?
I'm fantastic, Jeff. Thanks for asking.
You're certainly welcome, my friend. I hope everybody else is having a fantastic weekend. And as always, we really appreciate you joining us here for Show Me the Money. Jake, here's something that we haven't been able to say very often over the last couple of decades here. You can actually earn some pretty meaningful interest on relatively conservative investments again. The 30-year Treasury yield has moved above 5%, and today it's around 5.3%, its highest since 2007. So here's my question, Jake. I'm 60 or 65 years old and approaching retirement, and I can potentially earn 4%, 5% or more in parts of the fixed income market. Why should I still take a lot of risk in the stock market?
Jeff, that's a good question. And I think that it's a question that's on the minds of a lot of people that I talk to when they come in. They're like, hey, why would I invest this money when I can go get 4% in a CD? And that's a good question in the short term, but I think people that are thinking that need to look back prior to 2022 and remember that from 2009, 2010 to 2022, that interest rates were basically zero. CDs were paying 0.25% interest, and we're not guaranteed to stay at 4%. Some of the opportunities that are available today may not still be available by the time interest rates go back down. So this is something I'm having quite a bit of conversation about inside the office here, and we spend a lot of time talking through this and finding ways to try to keep interest rates in your portfolio high for longer is something we spend quite a bit of time thinking about here, because if interest rates go back down for savers, that's the biggest threat. And we have a lot of savers in this area. We got a lot of people that are in CDs, money markets, savings accounts. And while things are pretty good right now, I do think that we could go a little bit higher on interest rates, but if we go too much higher, that will cause some recessionary pressure on the markets because people will start saving instead of investing. And when they do that, that capital gets tied up and it doesn't work its way through the economy, which can create a recession potentially, depending on how high it goes. And then the response to that will be to lower interest rates. So we have a little bit of a lid on interest rates where it's going to be hard for them to go a whole lot higher, at least quickly from where they are right now. And I do think that AI, as we've talked about before on this show, is deflationary in nature, which means there's going to be more deflationary pressures. So I don't know that I would get used to the higher interest rates, and we need to be thinking about how we can keep our safe rate of return in a good fashion for the next 5 years, 10 years, not the next 5 or 10 months.
With interest rates a little high right now, 5%, 4.5% for some CDs, is there any urgency on the part of your clients to get in while the getting is good here with these interest rates?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are, it's really more the other side, Jeff, where people are like, why would I bother moving out of CDs if I'm getting 4%? And, that's a good question because not long ago, 4% was a gigantic number, especially on money that's safe. And it's still a good number. It's not a bad number. But the question is, as interest rates start to head back the other way, we go to 3.5, 3, 2.5, 2. At what point is it a slap in the face more than an interest rate? And there was a long period of time where interest rates were perpetually low. And so I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that that could happen again. And we need to build a plan around how we're going to combat that because our need for income is not going to go down just because interest rates do.
So, Jake, I'm going to tackle the big question again directly. Let's say that I've got a fair amount of stocks. Let's say that I've got 30% of my portfolio in stocks, and certainly they have the opportunity to return more than 5%. But right now, safe money is 5%. I'm 65. I've accumulated all this money. Why not sell most of my stocks and buy bonds yielding around 5%, call it a day?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, that's not necessarily a broken strategy. It kind of depends on your goals, how much money you need to have off your investments. What is your goal, to have your last check bounce, or is your goal to pass as much money to your beneficiaries as possible? We have interest rate risk to consider. If something happens to you and they sell the investment, the value of those bonds could be down. There's a lot of different things to consider. And the right answer is we probably need a couple, maybe even 3 different buckets of money, different types of investments to execute a plan well, because no one investment can do all the things correctly, right? We need growth, we need safety, and we need liquidity. And there's no one investment that can do all 3 of those things well. The stock market's good at growing your money and it's good at being liquid, but it's kind of sucks at safety. And your checking account is liquid and it's relatively safe, but you don't make any money, right? So if we can't have all 3 of those things, that means we need at least a couple of different piles of money working differently to satisfy all 3 of those things. So it's not so much whether it's stock market or bond market, it's more what kind of blend should we create to enhance our return aspect, but also get some of that safety that we want and combat against lower interest rates in the future while interest rates are healthy.
Talking with Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group, and we're talking about the current state of interest rates at 5%. It's not uncommon to find CDs 4.5%, 5% these days. If you'd like to come in and sit down and have a conversation with Jake about your journey towards a confident retirement, again, it's no cost and no obligation. Even if you've just got a couple of questions you'd like to talk to Jake in person, 417-889-7233 is the number to request your Floyd Financial Group retirement review. As I said, no cost, no obligation, no judgment. Will meet you where you are. Jake, when rates go up, investors start chasing yield. You see something paying 7% and something paying 5%, and naturally you think, I'll take the 7%. What is wrong with that strategy?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that could be considered here. There could be more credit risk. So the credit worthiness of the person lending that money is going to play into the interest rate in a big way. Even when interest rates were really low, Ford bonds were paying like 9% interest when a lot of other, like Microsoft, was paying 3%. And why is that? Because Ford at the time had 7 times as much debt as the company was worth. It was a real risk that it might go bankrupt at some point if things didn't go right. So you're taking more risk to get to that higher number. And that's not necessarily wrong, but it's something we want to do with our eyes open, and something that we want to make sure we don't want too much of a good thing, if that makes sense. There's also liquidity risk. Depends on what the investment is, how easily you can get your money out of there. There may be more duration risk, interest rate risk. So, if you're buying a 30-year bond versus a 3-year bond, you have a lot more duration risk and interest rate risk. If interest rates move up, you could get hurt there. 7% is not always better than 5%. Everything we look at here at Floyd Financial Group, I try to look at investments through this lens. It's okay to take some risk, but we want to make sure that we're maximizing our return for whatever risk that we're taking. What we don't want to do is just frivolously take risk and hope for a good return. If we're going to increase our risk, we want to make sure we're getting paid for it.
Jake, as we talked about 5% interest rates, do you think there's room for these interest rates to rise even more?
Jeff, I think they could rise a little bit more. The 30-year Treasury is not a super valid concern for most people, simply because you're not buying 30-year Treasuries. The average person doesn't own 30-year Treasuries. You got to have a really long time horizon or have a unique risk profile to be buying those. So I'm more worried about the shorter end of the curve. But if interest rates continue to rise because people are worried about U.S. debt, the Fed will likely be forced to step in and purchase some of those bonds so things don't get too out of control, which keeps a lid on the interest rate there. So what we're hoping for is, if we're buying bonds, we really want interest rates to fall, because if you're holding bonds and interest rates go down, your bond appreciates while you do that. Conversely, if you have bonds and interest rates go up, your bond is depreciated in value. Now, if you hold it to maturity and everything goes well, you'll still get your money back. But if you're forced to sell it in between when you bought it and your maturity, you could get hurt if interest rates go up. Usually what we want is to buy bonds and have interest rates fall, so we're making the interest and our bond appreciates at the same time. So the same thing that's been working against us for the last 15 years is now kind of starting to work for us. So bonds are certainly not a bad investment here, and I think they look better than they've looked in a long time. However, what is our opportunity cost? And people that listen to me on the show know I think this next 5 to 7 years is going to be very, very good in the stock market. And so I don't know that it's an either or, like we were saying earlier. I think it's more, what blend do we want to have? How much risk do we want to take? And how much return can we squeeze out of our investment within our risk tolerance, risk capacity thresholds?
Jake, if someone is listening right now, they're 60, 65, or 70 years of age, they have essentially the same retirement portfolio that they had 5 years ago. What is the question that they should be asking?
I think the question we want to ask is, how much money have we been making? And now that we have, if you've been invested in pretty much anything over the last 4 years or so, you should have made quite a lot of money. And we need to be thinking about what comes next and how much risk do we have on the table? Is our portfolio now out of balance because the market side has grown a lot and maybe some of the other stuff hasn't? Should we rebalance the portfolio? Are our goals the same? There's a lot of things to think about. The reason we have frequent reviews here with our clients, we try to do 90 days, every 180 days, somewhere in there, to meet with people to check in and go, okay, here's where we were, here's where we are now. Does that necessitate any changes? How's our retirement income going? Things are more expensive. How are we doing on our income? These are things that are an ongoing discussion. This is not something that we set up one time right before you retire and then we never think about it again. This is a ever-changing, ever-evolving plan that we put together, and we want to help you implement it as time goes forward.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Jake, what you're saying is that a retirement plan has to be flexible. It has to be elastic. You're not going to just set it and forget it. You go in and you make some subtle changes or maybe major changes as you go on, and you sort of roll with what's happening in the economy. Is it ever a good idea to set it and forget it for some parts of the portfolio and maybe not react to what the headlines are telling us?
We don't want to be knee-jerk reaction-y really ever. As far as setting it and forgetting it, I think in the accumulation phase, right, when you're 25 to 55, setting and forgetting it is probably a good way to go because you're working your career, you're building your family, you're raising kids and all that. And you don't need to be glued to your portfolio. It'd be better to set up a plan and just put money away, and whether the market's good or bad, you keep putting it away. When we get to retirement, though, sometimes changes necessitate us to make changes. And depending on what's going on around the world and the economy, there might be things that need to change. But we certainly don't want to be like every headline that comes out. If Trump talks about Iran again, we just sell everything. That's been a very losing strategy over the last couple of years. If we react to everything that Trump says or does that causes chaos, we would have cost ourselves 20 or 30% in the market at this point. So it's important to take everything in context and in context of our plan as a whole.
And Jake, I think the takeaway from this conversation is that it's really the distinction between simply owning investments and having an actual retirement plan. So if you're approaching retirement, maybe the question isn't whether stocks or bonds are better, but the better question is, does every part of your portfolio have a purpose, and does the whole thing work together to create the retirement income you need? Maybe that's the most important question coming out of today's conversation. Is your retirement portfolio still positioned for the world that we're living in today, or is it based on decisions that you made 5 or 10 years ago? If you're approaching retirement or already there, this is a great time to have Jake and the team here at Floyd Financial Group take a second look at your portfolio and your journey towards a confident retirement. We're offering listeners a complimentary retirement review, a chance to sit down, look at what you've accumulated and where your retirement income will come from and how much risk you're taking and whether your investment, Social Security, and overall strategy are working together. No cost, no obligation for the review, and no judgment. It's simply an opportunity to get another set of experienced eyes on one of the biggest financial decisions of your life. Call us here at Floyd Financial Group at 417-889-7233. It's 417-889-7233 and ask for your Floyd Financial Group retirement review. We're also online at floydfinancialgroup.com. Time for a break, Jake. When we come back here on Show Me the Money, we're going to be talking about money through the eyes of a 15-year-old Trevor Floyd when our program continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready for another helping of some more real money talk? Thought so. Now, here's another serving of Show Me the Money with your hosts, Jake Floyd and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back to Show Me the Money. I'm Jake Floyd, and in this segment, we're going to be looking at retirement and money through the eyes of a 15-year-old.
And Jake, usually when we talk about retirement in this program, I'm talking with you about people in their 50s, 60s, or 70s. Well, today we're going to go in exactly the opposite direction. Jake's son Trevor is joining me. Trevor's 15 years old, which means retirement is about, a half century away or so. Hey, Trevor, welcome to the radio program. How do you feel?
I'm feeling great. I'm happy to be here with you, Jeff.
All right, we're glad to have you. I'm going to warn you right now, though, Trevor. I'm going to ask you some questions about money, work, and retirement. And remember, there are no right answers. This is money and retirement through the eyes of a 15-year-old. So, Trevor, you're 15 when someone your age says somebody is rich. What does that really mean? What does rich mean?
Well, people my age have several opinions on that. There are people my age who think it is having just a big pile of money in a big house. In my opinion, it's a little bit more complex than that. I feel like it's possessions, right? But there's more to it. There's experiences, there's family. And I don't think that you really need to have that many possessions to be what I would consider rich.
So it's more than just about money. A lot of people think that if you got $1 million, you're going to be rich. But if I'm hearing you correctly, Trevor, what you're saying is money is just part of the puzzle.
Yeah, I think that there's money and there are some things money can't buy. You can't simply buy a family. And there are even certain possessions that money can't buy. Some things you have to go out and see some experiences. You got to see Mount Rushmore. You're not just instantly rich and then you've seen Mount Rushmore. You got to go there. You got to drive there. You got to experience it. And I think that's important.
What is something that adults spend a lot of money on that you think is completely ridiculous in your opinion?
More than one house.
Okay.
It's a pet peeve with me.
I guess I should cancel the lake house that we were planning to buy.
Yeah, Trevor, you just shot yourself in the foot.
Oh, no.
I think what you're saying is maybe more than one residence. I mean, having a lake house is something a little bit different because that's a place where you can have those experiences.
I think the lake house is okay as long as you don't go there to live a whole summer, right? I feel like it should be something that you go to parts of the summer. But I feel like having like two essentially full-time residences is a little bit much. Too much to manage, and obviously it costs more money to buy another house, but it costs even more money because you got to manage both at the same time, upkeep, maintenance.
Trevor, if your dad or me gave you $1,000 today and said you could do anything you wanted with it, what would you do with that money?
Well, I won't say I'm the most responsible individual on earth. I'd probably go out, eat something nice, maybe invite my friends to some sort of get-together of some kind, and if I have any left, I'd save it, but I typically spare no expense. So.
Okay. Not necessarily McDonald's. You may go to a nice restaurant or something like that. So I think what you said is really important, that you're not really spending it on yourself as much as you are inviting friends to enjoy the benefits of what money can do for you. Because as we've talked about in the show, money is just a tool. I want you to be truthful about something. Has having Jake as your father made you more careful with money, or are you tired of hearing about it all the time?
Maybe a bit of both. I think it's very helpful to me living every day with somebody who handles money as his job, right? And I learn a lot of things, and I wouldn't know a lot of things that I know if it weren't for him. But it does occasionally get tiresome, you know.
You were doing so good.
Yeah.
Why do we have to do the butt part? Why don't we just leave it at the first part?
Well, I know that when I was a kid, my mother used to say, you kids don't know the value of a dollar, because she came from a different time. It was the post-Depression, and we kids, if we had a dollar, we just spent it. So I don't know, maybe times haven't changed that much. When you're 15, Trevor, do you ever think about being 65 years old, or does that seem ancient? Is it even something that you can fathom, being 65 and being retired? Your grandpa's retired.
Obviously, it's like you said, it's half a century away. It's a long road. And I mean, it's conceivable to me, but I don't think about it that often. There's a lot of things in between 15 and 65.
Yeah.
Wise words.
And I don't know, when I think about it, I would hope that I'd have some cash stored away in a vault somewhere, preparing for the world to end, or being out of here before that happens. But I don't think it's really even that wise for me to try and pontificate of something I don't know a lot about. But, when I think of being 65, I just hope that I lived my life correctly and that it's going to pay off.
All right, Trevor, I'm going to give you some choices here. You can't say both. You got to pick one, and you got to tell me why. So I'm going to throw these at you sort of rapid fire. $100 today or $500 5 years from now?
Oh, well, 5 years is a long time, Jeff.
In your world, yeah, it's a 30-year life. So if you're going to pick $100 today.
Yeah, I'd say so.
New car with a payment or an old car that you own outright? What do you think? And an old car, I'm saying something that might be 8 years old.
Probably go with the older car.
You don't like the idea of being in debt to your eyeballs?
No, I don't. I don't like it. No, I don't enjoy it.
Well, that's the American way, don't you, Trevor? Is that you make $60,000 a year, so what do? You go out and buy an $85,000, $90,000 truck, and you have $1,100 payment. So you don't agree with that, huh?
I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong. I just don't want to mess with it, really.
Okay, here's another one. $100,000 a year job that you absolutely hate, but you're making $100,000 or $60,000 doing something that you love.
Do a job that you love and you never work a day in your life, but $100,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah, but you hate doing it. You hate getting up in the morning.
True.
What's your happiness worth?
I don't know. I think it's worth quite a bit. I think I'd have to go with the $60,000 a year job.
All right. Rent a really nice apartment or save for a house that you own.
This one's harder.
Ah.
Obviously, you want to have some place that you don't have to answer to somebody, your landlord, and pay them money every month or whatever, right? But I don't think I would enjoy having a house simply because I don't take up a lot of space, right? An apartment seems more reasonable. I'd say probably the house from a responsibility standpoint, but from a personal preference standpoint, probably the apartment.
Trevor, would you spend $5,000 on a great vacation or put $5,000 in the bank? What would you do?
I'd say that I'd probably stay at home and put it in the bank and save it for later.
College with $100,000 of debt or start working at 18 with no debt. Now, you got a place you could probably go to work at right now. I don't know.
Well, this is kind of a real choice that's about to hit you, too, here shortly.
Exactly. $100,000 of debt or working at 18 at Floyd Financial Group. What do you think?
Feel like there are a lot worse places to work on earth. I'm going to have to go with Floyd Financial Group.
All right. And hey, it's already named after you. Work until 70, have a lot of money, or retire at 55 and live more modestly. What would you do, Trevor?
I would probably retire at 55.
Okay. And have a little more leisure time and maybe not have as much money. Talking with Trevor Floyd, the next generation of Floyd Financial Group is 15 years old, and we're talking about money through the eyes of a 15-year-old. You know, you're around adults all the time, Trevor. What is something that adults worry about that you think they worry about too much?
Well, I'm going to sound like a teenage boy here, but some parents I know are a little bit leery about having their kids spend a lot of time on the computer, video games. And while there are side effects that need to be considered, I don't think that it's something that you should spend a lifetime worrying about.
All right, Trevor, you spent your whole life listening to your dad talk about money and retirement. If you could turn the tables and interview your dad in his own radio show, what is the one question that you would like to ask him?
I want to know how to be rich.
Okay. Or what? Okay.
That's a good question. And I would say that, you know, for all the people listening here, with all my experience, all my clients' experience, all the things that I've seen, I would say being frugal is how you be rich from a monetary standpoint. But I would say that spending your life with the people that matter to you is how you're rich from an overall standpoint. I think that all the money in the world means nothing if you don't have anybody to share it with.
I'm going to switch things a little bit here, Trevor. On this show, we talk about the economy and occasionally we talk about politics. And through your eyes, you're 15 years old right now. What do you think about the state of the country, the state of the political environment, the state of the economy, just generally? What do you think about what's going on in the country today and where we might be headed?
Well, Jeff, that's a lot of big questions. You're asking me the hard stuff here.
Yeah.
Obviously, I love America. It's awesome here. I don't think I'll ever want to leave as long as it continues to be America and not what some people would have it be. And I think that right now, things have been better in America, but they've certainly been much worse. The economy, I mean, obviously I don't spend as much time looking at a stock chart as my dad does, but I'd say that things are more expensive than they were a couple years ago. I mean, even I, only 15 years old, remember when gas was much, much cheaper, like $1 or $2 cheaper. And when we went to California recently, there was gas at $7 a gallon.
Oh, yeah.
It's terrifying. That's the main reason not really concerned about the driver's license.
It gets expensive with that gas.
I think that's really it. I like America. I like the freedom of it. I like being able to make my own living and all that. But it's a big, scary world, to be sure. That's really all I got to say about it.
Talking with Trevor Floyd, Jake's son here, money through the eyes of a 15-year-old. Trevor, I appreciate you taking some time to talk to us. I know that you're going back to school here really, really soon, and maybe during the holidays we can have you back on because I want to ask you some more tough questions. If you would like to come in and sit down with Jake or Trevor Floyd at Floyd Financial Group and maybe ask Trevor some questions about your journey towards a confident retirement, you can do that by calling 417-889-7233 and requesting your Floyd Financial Group retirement review. Not going to cost you a dime. It's 417-889-7233 and see if Trevor can help you out with your retirement situation and the rest of your life. Guys, we're going to take a break and come back here on Show Me the Money. We're going to be talking about whether the best retirement strategy is half guaranteed or half invested when our show continues here in 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
We're back with your financial catch of the day, and it's a big one. Here's more Show Me the Money Radio with your hosts, Jake Floyd and Jeff Shade.
Welcome back to Show Me the Money. I'm Jake Floyd, and in this segment we're going to be talking about, is the best retirement strategy half guaranteed and half invested?
And Jake, I came across an interesting new retirement study, and I think it's going to get people's attention. For years, we talked about the so-called 4% rule. You retire with a portfolio, you take roughly 4% the first year, adjust your withdrawals for inflation, and hopefully make the money last. But researchers have recently compared that traditional approach with several alternatives. And here's the headline that caught my attention. The strategy that scored the best wasn't keeping everything invested, and it wasn't putting everything into an annuity. It actually was a combination. So first of all, Jake, when you hear 50% annuity, 50% investments or equities, what's your reaction? Is that a formula that people should actually follow?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a little too blanket of a situation. I think in today's world, that strategy is not a bad strategy. And there's a lot of people that could benefit from that, especially if they're going from an all market scenario in their 401ks. But annuities like CDs and bonds that we were talking about in the first segment here, I think they come and go as interest rates ebb and flow. I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but I did anyway, and so we're just going to go with it. I think that annuities, depending on the type of annuity, can be a good thing. And I think in today's world, fixed indexed annuities in particular are attractive because while interest rates are high, we get a bigger portion of the upside of the market. Again, a fixed index annuity is where your money is tied to an index to make money, but your principal can never go down and you get market-linked gains. Now, the thing that really separates, in my opinion, what a good annuity is from a bad one is how much money you can make. All fixed indexed annuities give principal protection, but some indexed annuities are capped at 4%, meaning you can never make more than 4%. So that's kind of a problem. If you have a floor of 0 and a cap of 4, you're going to make 2 or 3%, and that's not a very good rate when you can go to the bank and get 4. As we're thinking about 50% annuities, 50% investments, while that does make sense right now, it may not always make sense, and it may not make sense for everybody based on your goals. Annuities, pretty much by definition, are illiquid. There's a few exceptions, but you may not be able to get to your money right away in an annuity, which is why we want to be careful never to put too much money in annuities. If somebody comes to you and says, hey, we need to put 90% of your money in an annuity, I would not recommend that under pretty much any circumstance because now you can't get to your money if you need it. And if life is anything, it's uncertainty. So annuities do look good here and the market looks good. And we do need some guaranteed money, but just blanket 50-50 for everybody is too broad.
And Jake, we're going to use round numbers here. I think most people here in the last bastion of sanity are not sitting on $1 million for retirement, but let's use a hypothetical person, 65 years of age, has $1 million saved and received $25,700 a year from Social Security. What's a problem with simply saying, I'll leave the $1 million invested and take 4%, $40,000 the first year?
Yeah, the issue with that is something we call sequence of returns risk. So as you start to draw your money out, the overall average return becomes less important, and what becomes more important is the order in which those returns come in. If I have 3 years in a row of returns that come in 12% the first year, 0% the second year, and negative 12% the third year, and then I flip those around where it's negative 12, 0, and then positive 12, I have an average return of 0 on all three of those, right? And I can pick any number here. I just threw some numbers out. But as you start to withdraw money out of your portfolio will perform much better in the first sequence than it will in the second sequence. And because having negative returns early on in retirement can be very devastating, especially if we have big negative returns, having some safety in the portfolio can really increase your chance of success in retirement. And so throwing it all in against the stock market wall and seeing what sticks works a lot better during your accumulation phase. We're sort of gambling if we do that in retirement, saying, hey, hopefully this first 2 or 3 years is going to be great. If it's not, I'm screwed, right? And so I personally like to have a little more autonomy over it, a little more agency over the outcome of the retirement than just hoping for the best. So as we build plans, we want to build plans that work in any type of financial weather, whether it gives us a 2008 or a 2023, 2024 rebound. You know, I want it to be not jeopardizing your retirement or your retirement income simply based on the chance and the luck of the draw.
So, Jake, two retirees could average essentially the same investment return over 25 years and potentially have very different outcomes depending upon when the bad years occurred. And that's why the first several years of retirement can be so important. The study also produced some numbers that surprised me. With a traditional 4% approach, their simulations showed the portfolio completely depleted before death in about 12% of scenarios by age 90, 24% by 95, and 38% by 100. Does that illustrate, Jake, one of the biggest retirement problems today is that we just don't know how long we're going to live?
I would say that's a huge problem, but I think that's always been a problem. I talk to people every day that come into my office and they're like, hey, I'm 60, I'm going to retire early because my dad lived to 58 and his dad lived to 56 and they died of heart attacks. And then sometimes those people live to be 90, and they're not expecting to live past 70 under any circumstances. We've never known how long we're going to live, but I would say that the range of possible outcomes is much wider than it's ever been. And so as a planner, I need to be planning for you to live to 95 or 100. Whether we need to plan to 110 or not is debatable, but I certainly need to plan longer than 80 because a lot of people are going to outlive 80. You're going to have a hard time messing up your plan if you retire at 65 and you die at 70. But if you retire at 65 and you die at 95, there's a lot that can go wrong in 30 years. And so we need to be honest with ourselves about we don't really know what life has in store for us. So we need to maximize flexibility, and we need to make sure that we have the potential to make enough money to offset the money that we're spending and hopefully some of the inflation that we might see on the backside of all the money printing and everything that's happened over the last 15, 20 years.
Talking with Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group, we're talking about 50% equities, maybe 50% in safe money, whether or not that's a good plan. Our number 417-889-7233 if you'd like to get in and sit down and talk with Jake about your approach towards a confident retirement. Jake, why not go all the way? Why not put your entire nest egg, all the money that you've accumulated over life, except, of course, for Social Security, put all that money into an annuity and guarantee income for life? It solves one problem, but it appears to me that it could potentially create another one.
Yeah, if we use an immediate annuity like a pension to do that, the day we stroke the check and get the policy delivered, you can no longer undo that. So if you put $1 million in there and it's going to guarantee you $5,000 a month for the rest of your life, and you die the next day, then all that money's gone. If we use a fixed indexed annuity with an income rider, there's some other issues. You have generally quite a bit more fees and things to worry about, but you're essentially spending your own money. And if you use an annuity that has a lifetime income rider that's a good one that pays a lot of money, there's only 100 cents in a dollar. So if they're allocating money to income payments, then that means they're not allocating that money to where it can earn you money. So generally, those types of annuities earn a lot less money than the accumulation type. So there's a lot to consider there. But what I would say is to maximize your options over your lifetime. I can't tell you exactly what your retirement's going to look like, but I can promise you it'll be different than you are thinking it will be. Life will throw you some curveballs. If we have no room to maneuver, we're going to get hit by all those curveballs. So we need some kind of way to where we can change and adjust along the way. So I don't like locking things in forever and just hoping that nothing big is going to come at me. So when we're thinking about why do we need a lifetime income guarantee? The only reason we need that is if we think whatever product or investment strategy we have is not going to perform. If we're withdrawing 4% or 5% of our money each year, and we can even make 3%, that means you'll never live long enough to run out of money. So the only reason we need them to guarantee it is if we're not going to make any money. If we can just make a decent rate of return, we don't need the guarantee. We don't have to be paying them to guarantee that we spend our own money. I just don't like that situation. I would rather make you a decent return and get you to and through retirement with as many options on the table as possible so that you can navigate in whatever way life dictates is necessary, whether it's your family, whether it's your health, whatever needs to happen, I want you to be able to take care of it.
Now, Jake, some people say, I hate annuities because they're simply just repeating something that they have heard in the media. Some people hear annuities and they immediately say, high fees, commissions, complicated contracts. I don't want one of those. Is that criticism fair?
Jeff, I think it is fair to some extent. This is something, because I do use annuities in the office here. Not everybody has an annuity, but when they're good, I like to use them. And right now, interest rates are high, so they're paying some pretty good interest, so I like them. But I think that 95% of the annuities out there are complete garbage. So I think the vast majority of annuities, you either can't make money, they're too restrictive, or the fees are astronomical. That doesn't mean that all annuities are bad, though. It just means that most of them are. There are a handful of annuities out there and annuity carriers, the life insurance companies that issue the annuities, that do right by their clients and have a history of doing so, that publish that history where you can see in real time what returns people are making and can really add safety to the portfolio in a way that a bank account can't and in a way that a CD can't, in my opinion. Some of these companies were around in the Great Depression and helped bail out the federal government. These are companies that are very safe. Not all of them, but the ones that we like to use are very, very safe. You could argue they're the safest places on earth to put your money. So we can introduce safety. We can introduce market-linked gains that are pretty good returns. That's something we can talk about when you come in for your consultation. But what we really give up with the good annuities is we give up liquidity, not return, in exchange for the safety. So like I said, there's three components: growth, safety, liquidity. I have to give up one of those in each investment. That's why I want to have more than one investment, so I can still have all three of those things. But with the annuity, it's a good annuity is safe and it grows well, but we sacrifice some liquidity to do it. So to your question earlier, why not put all the money in the annuity? Because we have to have liquidity. And that's why we need a balanced approach. But as far as the annuity question, people are right generally when they're skeptical of annuities, because there's so many annuities out there that are 1.5%, 2%, 2.5%. Some of the variable annuities are north of 4% in fees with all the riders and everything stacked on. Well, I mean, if I'm returning 6 or 7% and I have 4% in fees, I can't make any money. So I think that's never justifiable, in my opinion, to have that kind of fee load. And then there's other carriers, I won't name names, but there's carriers out there that start you at good interest rates, and then right after the first year, once they lock you in, they just start dropping your rates to zero or near zero. So it's important to have a carrier that you have a history with, that your advisor understands. But it is a fair criticism that there's a lot of bad annuities out there. There's a lot of bad people writing annuities, agents out there that are not fully disclosing the drawbacks of the annuity, particularly when it comes to liquidity. And so that's why they have a bad rap, but that does not mean they are all bad, and it does not mean that they can't be good for a situation. But yeah, I do think the criticism's fair, Jeff.
So, Jake, let's throw away that 50-50 number for a moment. 50% safe investments, 50% in equities here. What's the real question that somebody approaching retirement should be asking?
Jeff, I think the question we need to ask is, how dependent do I want to be on market conditions to live my life the way I want to live it? And I would hope the answer is little to not at all. Some people come in, they're like, well, in years when the market's good, we'll spend more, and when the market's bad, we'll spend less or none. And I'm like, what kind of a retirement is that? You want to be done working. You don't want to have to look over your shoulder. We need to put a plan together that addresses all the problems so that you don't have to worry about that all the time. You're not on your RV checking the stock market every 5 minutes and cringing when it goes down and wondering whether you should spend less money. We want to set up an income plan that can sustain all different kinds of financial weather. And so the question is, should we add some safety to eliminate some of the possibilities of having big drawdowns while we're in retirement income? And I think for most people, the answer to that question will be yes, unless you just have a huge amount of money saved, more than you need. Most people can benefit from adding some safety in retirement.
Talking with Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. We're talking about 50% equities and 50% in safe money. And if you're listening and you're thinking to yourself, I've accumulated the money, but I'm not completely sure how I'm supposed to turn it into a retirement paycheck, this is exactly the kind of conversation that Jake and the team here at Floyd Financial Group have with our clients every single day. So if you'd like to have that conversation at no cost and no obligation, no judgment, call 417-889-7233. It's 417-889-7233 and request your Floyd Financial Group financial review. As I said, no cost, no obligation, no judgment. We're also online at floydfinancialgroup.com. Jake, time for a break. When we come back here, we're going to be talking about what if retirement comes 3 years earlier, when our show continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready to climb a mountain of financial know-how? Good, because it's time for more Show Me the Money with your financial Sherpa, Jake Floyd.
Welcome back to Show Me the Money. I'm Jake Floyd, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about what if retirement comes 3 years early.
And Jake, I came across a stat that I think ought to get the attention of anybody who's 5 to 10 years away from retirement. We spend an awful lot of time asking people, when do you plan to retire? Maybe the answer is 65, maybe it's 67. Maybe they're going to work until 70, but here's the problem. A recent retirement survey found that while Americans typically expect to retire around 65, the median actual retirement age was 62. Nearly half of retirees surveyed said they retired earlier than they had planned. Sometimes it's health, sometimes it's a layoff or downsizing. So today I want to ask a very different retirement planning question. What if you don't get to pick your retirement date? How big a deal are those 3 years, Jake, if somebody says, what's the difference? I'm retiring at 62 versus 65. Financially, could those years make a huge difference?
Absolutely. I think this is something people should consider. A lot of people think that it's up to them when they retire. And I'd say 30-40% of people, it's not up to them. A spouse is ill, they get health problems. A parent goes to the nursing home or whatever, and they need more assistance. There's a lot of other factors that come in, and you don't always get to be the one who decides. It's a little bit like the nursing home discussion. I get people that come in all the time like, oh, I'm never going to a nursing home, or I'll never put my wife in a nursing home. I have a news flash for you. It can get to the point where you don't have a choice. For their safety, for your health, and other reasons, like you may not have that choice. And so it's important to understand that that may not always be in your control. So we need to plan early on for the fact that what happens if you don't make it to 65, if you want to retire at 65 and you have to retire at 62? What are we going to do health insurance-wise? What are we going to do income-wise? How much income is that going to cost me? Is it going to cost me $200 or $300 a month, or is it going to cost me $1,000 a month based on the plan, based on where I'm at on saving, based on Social Security income? There's just a lot of factors to consider. And that's why having somebody in your corner that can help ask the right questions can really save you hitting a lot of potholes. A lot of times, because it's not up to you, you may say, hey, I was going to retire at 65, but man, my body's worn out. I just can't do this job anymore. And rather than go get another career, let's see what we can do today at 62. So this is a very valid question and something that's happening a lot right now, Jeff.
Jake, Social Security seems like the obvious temptation. I'm 62. I've just lost my job. Social Security says I'm eligible. Why wouldn't I just turn it on right then and there?
And sometimes that's the right thing to do. It depends on where you were at in your savings journey. I am, and for anybody listening to this show for a long time, they'll know this about me. I am a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush, or maybe even 3 or 4 in the bush kind of a guy. And when it comes to Social Security, I think it's worth 10 or 15 in the bush. I'm not sure what the future is for Social Security. I do not think they're going to cut it, just to be clear. But I don't know that. And we've all put a lot of money into Social Security. The average person withdraws less, even after interest and everything, than they actually put in, meaning the Social Security benefit is so awful based on the investments that are done inside of Social Security that you actually get less, even though you've had money paying in for 40 years. So I'm a fan of getting what you can while you can. I'm also a fan of not spending your money down harder by not taking Social Security, waiting for it to get bigger. I would rather do the opposite. I would rather burden Social Security and unburden your investments, because that gives you more options down the road. Like we were talking about last segment, life is nothing if it's not uncertainty, and things are going to change. Things are not going to always go according to plan. And the more money you have saved is more options in your tool belt, versus if we have waited on Social Security and we've spent your money down, that decreases your options.
Jake, you mentioned healthcare. I think this may be one of the biggest problems that people have, and the part that people underestimate. Medicare generally does not start until age 65. If someone unexpectedly retires at 62, I've got 3 years to cover. How big of a problem is that for health insurance?
Yeah, so right now, that's a pretty big problem. And there's a ton of people in that age range between 62 and 65 that would retire tomorrow if they could have health insurance. But health insurance is so cost prohibitive that they just can't really make it work. So I'm going to make a prognostication right now that this will be one of the ways that they sweep the unemployment rate under the rug. And what they're going to do is back the Medicare age back to 62 over the next 5 years, because the joblessness will be so pervasive due to AI that it feels better from an economic numbers standpoint to just say, oh, no, those people are actually retired. They didn't get laid off. And it will encourage people to retire, and therefore there'll be less jobs to fill already because of AI, and we won't have this gaping unemployment gap. So I think this is already kind of in the works. And then certainly once Social Security comes around, they're going to have to revisit that, meaning, in 2032, 2033, the Social Security fund is going to go to zero basically at the current rate. So they're going to have to figure out how to fill the coffers or reduce the pull on the coffers or whatever. And I think that's kind of a joint discussion that's going to happen in Congress, but I think they're going to wait as long as possible to have that discussion. So I'm thinking 3 to 5 years from now, not today.
So, Jake, there are other alternatives, though, between 62 and 65 for health insurance. I've heard of these Christian-based Medishare type of programs. Do you know how they work?
Yeah, so they can be a good option, but there's quite a few stipulations that go into a lot of them. A lot of them have a deductible period, meaning like you can't have a claim in the first certain amount of days. They require you to be a non-smoker. They require you to profess your faith. And for a lot of people listening, I'm sure that's not a problem. But there are some people that are not comfortable with that. But as far as their ability to pay, I know from experience and with a close family member that had a very large claim while she was on Medishare, and they paid exactly what they were supposed to pay and didn't give her any bones about it. So they can be a good option for certain people, but not for everyone.
Jake, if I am, let's say, late 50s, I do not know how long I'm going to be able to work. We'd like to work until 65, but as we said, it may end at 62. Is there a way to sort of stress test a retirement plan that you put together to ensure that you'll be okay at 62 if you have to retire at that time?
Yeah, I mean, we really just need to sit down and talk and go, okay, what's our budget look like now? And you may not have budget numbers. 99% of people don't have a budget. But we can sit down and figure out, okay, what's our net paycheck that we're used to living on? How much are we saving? If we're not saving anything, what's that net pay? We need to add back in the cost of insurance and taxes, and that'll give us a baseline budget. And we need to see how close we are to that. Is that something we can fill with Social Security and with investments? Or do we need to make some tweaks ahead of time so that we're ready for that potential eventuality? And some people are ready. Sometimes people come in at 60, and I'm like, you don't even have to go to 62, let alone 65 if you don't want to. And they're like, really? And I was like, yeah, I mean, you're in good shape. If you're comfortable living the lifestyle you're living now, you can keep going. And sometimes they retire, and sometimes they're like, man, I don't know what I would do with myself if I retired at 60. My wife's still got to work another 2 or 3 years or whatever. So everybody's a little bit different, but these are conversations that I have all the time. It can help you work out what the right path is for you. if we just sit down and talk about it.
Talking with Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group, we're talking about whether or not you have to retire at 62 versus 65. Maybe your body or your mind will not let you work until 65. And what should you do? You've got questions. 417-889-7233 is the number to be in touch with Jake here at Floyd Financial Group. Jake, what about debt? If somebody is 5 years away from retirement, does it make sense for getting serious about eliminating debt before the planned retirement date, or should you be serious about eliminating it all through your life and, of course, on into retirement?
Well, if you're getting close to your retirement date, we can't go back, so there's no time like the present. However, it depends on the kind of debt for me, Jeff. Not everybody should go in and reach into their 401k and pay off their house. In fact, pretty much, I won't say nobody, but almost nobody should probably do that, because paying off the house with retirement money also creates a tax situation, can create IRMA problems or Affordable Care Act problems where your premium on your health insurance goes up. So there's a lot of things to consider there. So I won't say never, but almost never do we want to do that, especially if you have a low interest rate at 3% or 2.5% or something crazy. That money's almost free money. But certainly unsecured credit card debt that's 20 and 30% interest, we definitely want that gone. Retirement's hard enough without having to deal with that. So you want to get that figured out. Vehicles are nice to pay off too, especially if you buy used vehicles. If you're paying 6 or 7% interest on those, that would be good, because that's a pretty good size payment. The house, though, again, is a different discussion. I have people retire all the time without a paid off house. We just need to make sure that the income is right and the cash flow situation's right. But we can also discuss accelerating the payoff. Maybe you owe $30,000 on your house and your house was $300,000 or whatever, and you're toward the end of that mortgage. That can make sense to pay them off then, just to improve the cash flow situation. But again, unfortunately, there's no blanket answers. This is something we got to talk about.
So, Jake, I'm listening to the program today. I'm 55, 58, 60 years old. What is the exercise you want me to do to prepare for the day when someone says, if they say, you don't have 3 years till retirement, we're going to let you go right now?
Yeah, here's some of the questions that you should be asking yourself. Where is your income going to come from to make ends meet the way you do now? Where are you going to get health insurance? Are we going to go on the Affordable Care Act? Are we old enough to be on Medicare, et cetera? How much cash do we have on hand in an emergency fund? Should we claim Social Security? Are we going to work part-time, or are we going to fully retire? Which accounts are we going to use to withdraw income from, and how much? Does your retirement plan that you had in place, assuming you had one, does it still work, or is it blown up by this accelerated timeline? And what do we do about it? If you don't know the answers to these questions, that doesn't mean you're in trouble. It just means that these are things that we need to plan to address for you as you get closer to retirement.
And Jake, I really like that question. What if Friday was my last paycheck? Because retirement planning shouldn't only be about preparing for the retirement we hope we're going to have. It should also prepare us for the retirement that actually shows up, maybe sometime sooner than you expected. Maybe you're 58. You're planning to work until 67. Great. Let's build a plan for 67, but let's also find out what happens at 64 or 62, because the research tells us that a lot of Americans leave the workforce earlier than they had expected. And that's where the Floyd Financial Group Retirement Review comes in. If you're within 5 or 10 years of retirement, Jake and the team here at Floyd Financial Group can help you answer not only can I retire when I want to, but another very important question: what happens if I have to retire earlier than I had planned? If you would like to have that conversation with Jake, call 417-889-7233 and request your Floyd Financial Group Retirement Review at no cost and no obligation. We'll set you up for a retirement, whether it comes at 70, 65, or 62. All you've got to do is call 417-889-7233. Absolutely no cost and no obligation. We'll meet you where you are. Well, Jake, we're out of time for this week. I want to thank you for your time, but most importantly, I want to thank our great listeners here in the Springfield area for joining us, the last bastion of sanity. So for Jake and Trevor Floyd, I'm Jeff Shade. Get out there, have yourself a great weekend. We'll talk to you again next week right here with another edition of Show Me the Money on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
The information provided in the preceding program is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representations as to its completeness or accuracy. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Financial planning is offered through Floyd Financial Group, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.